This guy is my standout of the year, and I hope that he gets some level of recognition the way that Robert is. Welcome back to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, as always, Isaac Joel, right here in Phoenix, Arizona, and you are listening to the Critics with Agents of Fandom. And today I'd like to introduce you guys to a special guest of mine, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Ruben Ripalda. Ruben.
What's going on here, live in the flesh here in Phoenix, Arizona, finally. You know, it's been a minute since I've been here with my boy Isaac. We've been doing this for a while. You know, it wasn't, the Critics, but it was, we were trying to do our own thing. But then, I kind of was blessed with this opportunity to create Agents of Fandom with, my boy TJ and Garrett. And it's built up to such a big team. It's been such a cool accomplishment for all of us, and then we've been able to expand to a different bunch of shows, different podcasts for different audiences.
We've been doing this since high school, since the garage, man. We started a piece of shit podcast in your garage, man, and it evolved into so much more, into the connections and the friendships that we made with this community. And I want to get into it, but this is his film. This is his. And for me, it's very hard to criticize and break down and review something that I feel is created in its own little art form, in its own bubble, and I have to accept it for what it is, and I accept it for what it is. I love this film. I truly do. And you're speaking to a guy who, yes, is one of the biggest Christopher Nolan fans of all time. I remember as a child, my mother surprised me and took me to the premiere of The Dark Knight. And that blew my mind because I did not know movies could sound so freaking intense. And really, like, I was a child, man. I did not know anything about sound design. I didn't know. I wanted to be a filmmaker, but I didn't know anything about that at the time. I knew what I was listening to, like, oh my God, like, who does this? Why? When I saw Spider-Man 2, I knew I wanted to be a director. When I saw Christopher Nolan's movie, I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker, man. I knew that I wanted to be an auteur. I knew I wanted to take this stuff seriously too, because he takes cinematic blockbusters and has it contained into like a low budget style writing, acting. It's all about the actors. It's all about the characters. And Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. are bringing their A game into this film.
Yeah, man. Going to start off with Christopher Nolan, I think, this is in fact the perfect Christopher Nolan movie. But this movie, it felt like they did not hold him back. Like, he had full control to do whatever he wanted, and it shows off from, the way the actors are used, the way it's shot, the way the decision they went with not using CGI, which we'll get to in later in this review. Like I was going to say before, I think this is going to be the movie that people remember him for. We can think back, Inception, Interstellar, those are classics,
Those are blockbusters. They're great, big movies.
You'll remember when you saw Interstellar or Inception for the first time. And honestly, with that experience I had watching this movie, and thankfully it was in the 70 millimeter IMAX version, which is the ultimate version. So if you have that version nearby and there's a seat available, please take it. Don't even hesitate.
Because you're seeing the grain, the scratches, the dirt,
everything. You're seeing how it's supposed to look, and like, even if it's a couple bucks extra, it is totally worth it, because when you get to those key moments in the story, in the visual, the music, like, it totally pays off.
What's such a shame was they really missed out on an opportunity to do a bomb explosion popcorn bucket, man, because I would have had that with me during this movie, man. That would have been the like if it was just flames, like flames coming out of it, or Oppenheimer's hat. You're just eating out of his hat. Yeah, yeah, man. There was everything about this was so iconic. The way that he put on his hat, the wardrobe, the style, the way that they actually built the real set at Los Alamos where they built the bomb, and they actually shot two at the universities that he taught at and that he worked at and he studied at, and being in those actual environments is so completely different as opposed to them replicating it, or you can make a really good copy, but for them this like the details were like in like you open a drawer and there's literally supplies of whatever it was they needed back then at that time, and so it was like they're literally living inside the way that they lived in the back then. And I think the whole film has an interesting a layer, and the way that it spreads out all of the information from the opening, seeing him as a student, seeing him as a lover, seeing him as a father, and then seeing him as a scientist, and getting wrapped in with the military and these moral dilemmas he was having of I no, we shouldn't and we couldn't and we can't do this. But I don't trust them or anyone else to do. There were so many lines that were heartbreaking, in particular when he was speaking to one of the other scientists. He was like, I don't know if we can be trusted with a technology like this, but I know that the Nazis cannot. And it all kind of just like comes to an end when the Nazis it all just kind of comes to an end when the Nazis lost the war. And so they're still building this mega bomb with no enemy target, and but they're just kind of still looking and wanting to use it for something to make a statement, man. And give a lot of props for Gary Oldman as President Truman. Uh, Christopher Nolan does such a good at repurposing and reutilizing his actors and the people that he likes to play ball with. And Gary Oldman, eight as President Truman in that like 3 minute scene. It's literally just that one scene, and it's like, oh, he eats in it, man. I could go back and watch the movie for that. The black and white in this movie. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but listen, these are the bros. These are everything that kept me engaged with the movie. As you were talking about the music, the score, and everything, dude. The black and white. It was at times, not all the time, but it was this beautiful blue black and white in a couple of frames that I just couldn't get enough of, and I really loved how they used it as Strauss's point of view, and the color as Oppenheimer's point of view.
Yeah, that thing I didn't catch until later.
Because you didn't watch any of the trailers, you didn't look at any of the press. You came into this completely blind, as opposed to me that I was watching all the featurettes, everything.
But going back to Cillian Murphy, you really do get his human story. That was something going in. I was like, how are they going to tackle that, knowing that this is his movie, and they nailed everything from grief, anxiety, all those elements that go into a person. And I feel like they didn't hold back at all. You like you said, you see his love life, you see his worth ethic, everything. The way it was composed together, it was just so beautifully made. And if you're a fan of just human stories, like, you are gonna fall in love with this movie.
An interesting story about the script itself. When Nolan presented it to like Robert Downey Jr., he printed it out. First and foremost, it's written in the first point of view, so it's not written as he walks into the room. It's written as I walked into the room, and scripts are not formatted like that. For those out there that don't know that, but when he printed it out, this is another thing that you really don't do. He printed it out in red paper in black ink, for reasons I have no idea why. That's like really, really hard to read. At that point, you're reading like secret codes. That must have been like kind of terrifying. But I really think that this dude was making a serious impression, and with this cast.
But speaking, to the other cast members in this movie,
It's such a stacked cast, man. Rami Malek, man. Kenneth Braha, Emily Blunt, Dan DeHaan, Casey Affleck, man. The list goes on and on. Jason Clark, man. Gary Oldman, Lawrence Pugh, Josh Peck. Oh, everyone. When you talk about like every character matters.
yeah, if you go into the movie, you see this cast, you're like, you gotta be like, how are they gonna fit all these people? How does everyone get their moment? And they do. I feel like each the bigger cast members, they do get their moment to shine. Rami Malek was one that was kind of iffy at first, but kind of after thinking it for a couple days, I do feel like his place kind of fit the narrative.
For me, my favorite supporting role that I was not expecting, not because I didn't think he had what it takes. I know this guy's got what it takes. I know he's the GOAT, but I didn't know he had it like that. Benny Safdie is so. I got chill saying his name. I'm not exaggerating. I got chill saying his name. The accent that he does in this movie, the performance the way he's challenging Oppenheimer. I'm getting emotional just kind of thinking about it. This guy is my standout of the year, and I hope that he gets some level of recognition the way that Robert is.
But for me personally, he's one of the side characters, but I feel like he was very much involved in the core of the story. It's David Krumholtz. If you don't know this name, if you're a fan of the Santa Claus movies from way back in the late 90s, you'll recognize his face. But this guy, bro, he brought his absolute A game. He looked tough. He looked sympathetic.
There was a scene when he like started crying just by talking about how dangerous this was.
Yeah, he was truly, his right hand man for Robert Oppenheimer, and he just shocked me. I wasn't really expecting much from him since he's really not. He hasn't been involved in much projects as of late.
But he's always that guy that when he walks in on screen, he's there. There's a moment in this film when Oppenheimer's head is down, and he comes in the hallway, and he has like a handkerchief with him. And he opens it, and he's got oranges in there. He's like, "Here, you need to eat something." You just understand that, wow, this guy is so stressed out. He's not eating anything. He's not thinking about anything else besides what is going on. They know the complications that are going on in his mind. There were absolutely no visual effects in this movie. What I'm thinking is they shot everything, and for a couple of things that they would just like overlay it on top of each other, which in some cases people will go out and get stock footage or hire another crew to go out there, but I don't know how, but they actually shot whatever quantum physics realm that he was like seeing in his head whenever he was in bed, whenever he was dreaming, whenever he was doing anything. He would kind of like have these visions. I need to know how they shot certain scenes, because this is a scientific experiment within itself, the whole production of the movie.
The visuals in this movie are something to not take lightly, because if you hear them saying use computer graphics, you're like, damn, they must look kind of weak, or maybe they don't show everything. But like, yeah, they set this up. They set up the money shot.
It's a horror film. It's a horror film. He made his horror film. He truly did. For some people, if you're not really a fan of aspect ratios changing, you're probably going to be one of those people walking out and complaining about it. But for me, in my own personal case, I think when those big blockbuster movies do is, in particular, like action movies, and they're constantly changing the aspect ratio, like the Transformers movies, it is super eye jarring and annoying and irritating. In the case of Christopher Nolan, he only changes the ratios. He's shooting different scenes on different cameras based on that scene. For me, I trust that he wants me to experience this moment this way. He wants it shot on this camera this way. And there is in the beginning of the film, it was so gorgeous. It was Robert Downey's character walking um, in the university in the field with the trees behind him, and just the shot, man, the bokeh, the sharpness and what he was wearing, and the sound, everything was connecting. And it is you guys got to go watch this movie. Seriously, it is cinema. My prediction of this movie before going into it was that this movie was going to succeed at the end of the box office weekend as opposed to Barbie. I think I might be wrong on that. We'll find out in a couple of days what the verdict is. But we're going to be checking out Barbie tomorrow and giving you guys our review, our taste on that. Very excited to kind of like see where these two movies lie. I know they're kind of completely, they have nothing to do with each other, but hey, it's fun what social media has been doing, man. I know when we went to the premiere, who do we see? Was it Zach Pope? He was wearing the Barbie Oppenheimer. Yeah, man. Oh, goat, legendary, man. It was so cool talking to him in line. He told us that he saw Barbie before, and he had a really, really good time seeing it. And so, any last thoughts on this, Ruben?
I truly recommend it. I truly recommend you see it in theaters. Yeah, if you're able to go to a cinema near you, please check this one out because it is truly some it's a piece of American history. It's a piece of just world history because this was such an event that impacted the whole world, not just the United States. And I feel like even whether you were in support of them building that bomb or whatever, like I feel like it connects us all, and I think it's something that everyone could enjoy.
We always have to look back at history and learn from it, man. That's what's so important about history. A lot of people want to forget about it, but it is so relevant. It's relevant to what's happening today. uh I am a huge fan of history. It was one of my favorite subjects growing up, and so for me, knowing that history movies don't have to be boring, don't have to be like, oh, this happened in 1984, this happened in that year, and then they literally like timestamp and kind of like spoon feed you this Wikipedia info. That goes the same with those musical bio movies, like it's a piece of history. Knowing that we can reflect on history, reflect on people who have been part of the world in the way that it is today, and how it's shaped and formed, knowing that we could go into their world with a different lens and a different vision and a different look on it, and not have an opinion on it, but rather learn something from it. I think this movie is very important, and I really recommend it to you guys. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. I cannot wait to see it again in theaters and again and again. This is something that I'm going to be, yeah, studying over time.
One thing, actually, I kind of wanted to. Sorry for interrupting you. We really didn't cover was the score by Ludwig. Usually, Christopher Nolan does his movies, or in the past, he was very famously known for using Hans Zimmer and his style of sound. You remember the Interstellar soundtrack, Inception. Those were iconic pieces of music that'll forever be remembered, or read about in music schools and stuff like that. But what they did with this movie, the way they incorporated sounds with not only just a soundtrack, but like the sounds of explosions, sounds of that era, it was just tastefully done. And it's something that I know the soundtrack just came out a couple hours ago, but I'm definitely gonna dig into my Spotify playlist and listen to that entire soundtrack because it is truly one of my favorite soundtracks of all time.
As much as I love the sound too, I love when they didn't use sound. And it was like those two were a duality of knowing when to use sound, knowing when not to use it. And they chose their moments perfectly. Thank you everybody, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. As always, I am your host, Isaac Joel, right here at the Critics with Agents of Fandom with Ruben Ripalda. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you for listening.